In the city's most expensive steakhouse, respect is usually the first thing on the menu. People come here to celebrate life's biggest wins, promotions, anniversaries, multi-million-dollar deals. In a place like this, there's an unspoken code that everyone follows. You dress well, you speak softly, and you treat the staff like the professionals they are. I've spent a decade perfecting this craft, ensuring every fold of a napkin is precise and every glass is spotless. But tonight, Table 4 decided they were above the rules. 4 young, trendy influencers, draped in designer labels that screamed for attention, arrived with a cloud of arrogance. They didn't walk, they strutted. They didn't talk, they performed for their front-facing cameras as if the world was their stage. To them, I wasn't a person with a decade of service experience or a name. I was a prop, a background character in their latest story meant to be edited out. They thought my dignity was worth less than the sparkling water they were sipping with such rehearsed nonchalance. They ordered the finest cuts, Wagyu Ribeye, aged for 40 days, served with gold leaf butter and expensive sides. But the food wasn't for eating. It was for the content. A ring light sat next to a $3,000 handbag, casting a cold, artificial glow over our warm, dim dining room. I felt the heat rising in my chest, a slow burn of frustration, but I kept my eyes steady. I'm a professional. I've dealt with egos before, but this felt different, deeper, and more personal. The shadows moved across the polished wood floors as I paced the room, watching the elite of the city enjoy their evening in quiet luxury. I walked away from Table 4 as they posed for another artificial selfie, the light focusing on my back as I disappeared into the shadows of the service station. They were about to find out exactly how wrong they were about me. The disrespect didn't start with a bang. It was a slow, agonizing drip that tested my patience every second. It started when the leader, a kid no older than 22, snapped his fingers at me like I was a stray dog waiting for a scrap. They huddled together, whispering and snickering like high school bullies, looking down at me with a sense of superiority that only comes from unearned wealth and online likes. I saw them looking at my shoes. They were slightly worn out from 12-hour shifts on hard floors, but polished to a mirror shine. To them, these shoes were a symbol of a life they couldn't imagine, a life of actual work and weary feet. Then came the power move. A hand with a designer watch pushed away a perfectly cooked steak with a look of pure disgust. "It's cold," he lied, though the steam was still rising and the butter was still melting. The leader looked up at me with an arrogant smirk, his jewelry glowing under the chandeliers. He talked down to me using words meant to belittle, meant to remind me of my place in their world. When the bill finally arrived, it was a staggering $600. A drop in the bucket for them, but a week's wages for most people in this city. He pulled out a sleek black credit card, tapping it on the table with a rhythmic thud thud thud. The sound of entitlement echoing in the quiet room. I took the card, processed the payment, and brought back the leather folder with the receipt. I watched as he took the pen with a smirk. In big, aggressive strokes, he wrote a 0 on the tip line. A bold, mocking statement left for me to find. He leaned in, the smell of expensive cologne and malice hitting me like a physical weight. "Get a real job," he whispered, his eyes cold. "Maybe then someone will actually care about your time." They stood up, laughing loudly, leaving behind a trail of crumbs and chaos as they walked toward the exit, confident they had won the night. I stood over the remains of Table 4 for a long moment, breathing slowly. Half-eaten bread, spilled wine, and crumpled napkins littered the white linen. It was a battlefield of ego. I began to clear the mess, my hands moving mechanically. As I lifted a heavy, wine-stained napkin near the edge of the table, I felt something hard, something cold. There it was. A leather key fob with a polished silver horse. A Ferrari. The keys to their $300,000 personality had been forgotten in their rush to leave. I held the key in my palm, feeling its weight. It was heavy, much heavier than the respect they had shown me. I looked at it for a long time, a mysterious calm washing over me as the plan formed. Outside, the city was slick with rain, the air turning chilly. The neon lights reflected off the pavement at the Valet stand in blurred streaks of color. I could see them through the large glass windows. The leader was frantic now. He was patting his pockets, his face turning a ghostly shade of pale as the realization hit his gut. They were on their hands and knees in the rain, looking under the valet desk, searching the wet pavement, their designer clothes getting soaked and ruined. Then they turned. In a blurred motion of panic, they began sprinting back toward the heavy glass doors of the restaurant they had just mocked. I didn't move an inch. I leaned against a dark wood pillar inside the dining room, holding the key casually between my fingers, hidden from their sight. I watched them through the glass, a small, quiet smile forming on my face. The poor waiter wasn't in a hurry anymore. They burst through the doors, breathless, desperate, and dripping with rainwater. The leader reached out his hand, his eyes wide with fear. "The keys," he gasped, his voice cracking. "They're on the table. Give them to me." I held the keys up, just out of his reach, the silver horse catching the light. I remained perfectly composed, my voice as smooth and steady as the silk ties we wear. Before he could move closer or shout again, our head of security, a man who doesn't believe in content or influencers, stepped up silently behind me. Outside, the night turned red and blue. The police lights reflected off the restaurant's windows, illuminating the panic on their young faces. "I'm sorry," I said firmly, my voice carrying across the quiet room. "But since I don't have a real job, I'm not authorized to handle luxury items left by unidentified owners. I wouldn't want to overstep my boundaries. I didn't give the keys to the kid. I handed them directly to the security guard. I followed protocol. These are now in the hands of the authorities." The group looked paralyzed as a police officer entered the frame from the street. You see, when a Ferrari is lost, the police check everything: registration, insurance, and most importantly, the sobriety of the claimant. The leader looked at the floor, his pride completely evaporated into the dark shadows of the steakhouse. I turned my back on them for the last time, the weight of the night finally gone. I walked toward the kitchen, removing my gloves, feeling a satisfaction no tip could ever buy. The table was empty now. The $0 tip was still visible on the crumpled receipt. But as my silhouette walked into the light of the kitchen, I knew who truly owned the night.